last day of DragonCon. Boo. So some people woke up. I see a few people out there. How many people partied too much? None of you. Oh, you did.
That's how 2 hands go up.
The people in the front row. That's where you go when you party too much. Usually that's the person way back there they don't know about, and they're like, I'm back here. All right, so we have Mandisa. And you should know Mandisa if you're in this audience. If you don't, she'll probably tell you who she is during her personal intro.
Yeah.
But if anybody is involved with fundraising or has an organization, that's kind of what this is about. And I do too much nonprofit work in my life, so it's always good information to know. And then even this is not a nonprofit, but it is kind of.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I need to find a job where I make money. That's what I have to do. All right, so I'm going to let Mandisa tell you how hard it is to get money.
Thank you all very much for coming to this. I framed it as a workshop the first time I did it last month in August at Skepticon. But I think there's, since this is a very intimate crowd, we might be able to get some participation as well as some feedback from you all. So the name of this presentation is called The Hard Part, which is asking for financial support for our organizations. So how many of you either run, founded, started, or volunteer for specifically a nonprofit organization? Okay, good. So a good number of you. And yes, to clarify that, Derek, DragonCon is listed as a .org. So it might or might not be a nonprofit. So
Originally.
Okay.
For tax reasons, because it grew too much.
Yeah.
But nobody, not a single, by the way.
And that's probably that's a good problem to have, by the way.
Does this work?
I don't think so, Derek. I don't think anyone can hear you.
Hey. So, okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
DragonCon actually started out as a nonprofit, and it kept growing. But for tax reasons, it was unsustainable because of that. So it is actually a for-profit company. However, even the people at the top, not a single I'll tell you exactly how much money I get paid to do this, and it's not zero, it's $200.
Wow.
And that $200 really they give us so we can pay for things like that banner, and so we have enough money to like not feel like, okay, I'm volunteering and also spending money. In fact, I can submit things to say, okay, I need a few extra bucks, and most of the time, if it's reasonable, they'll probably give it to you. Even the guests here, the best they'll get is per diem. So even the big name people, they're not getting paid either. So that's always impressive to me that this giant thing runs that way. But yes, it is actually a for-profit company. But if you know anything about accounting, that's just whatever. It doesn't really matter too much. So yeah, even the people in charge, we all have to have real jobs.
Right. And this is one of the most difficult parts, especially when you're starting an organization or you're involved with an organization that can be pretty small, even something that grows as large as DragonCon. There are many people who like to see the end results. We love to see all of the costumes, have all the parties and all of the workshops and all the panels. But there are many people who don't know what it takes behind the scenes in order to pull this stuff off. And for organizations and companies, especially that host events like this, that are definitely educational and informative, and even community-based organizations, it's a lot of work. And I'm not speaking here from a strictly professional, even though I am a professional now fundraiser, but I'm not giving it to you from an academic point of view. This is going to be from organizer to fellow organizers or people who are looking to get more involved, because there are other things that come into play when you are looking to fundraise for your organization or for whatever entity that you may have. So with that, I'm going to go into about me. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Mandisa Thomas, and I am the founder and president of Black Nonbelievers Incorporated. It was an organization that was started in the Atlanta area in 2011, so we are 8 years strong now. We are a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to the visibility and community support and advocacy, not exclusively for, but primarily for Blacks and other people of color who are coming out as atheists, agnostic, humanists, skeptics, etc. And due to, I spoke yesterday, and I appreciate everyone who came today, but for those of you who were at the talk yesterday, which is Fear of a Black Atheist, I discussed why religion is an issue within the Black community, why you don't see very many Black atheists openly identifying, but that there was a need to start an organization that helped increase that visibility and bring people together into the larger communities and movements. And last year, I transitioned into full-time activism in addition to developing my still nonprofit volunteer organization. So just getting that out there too. I was also working a full-time job from 2008 to 2018. I was the event services manager at the Centers for Disease Control's Conference Center at the Roybal campus on Clifton Road. And so due to the yeah. So with the growth of the organization, with the increasing demands on my time in the movement, which I'm very thankful and grateful for, and other personal and family circumstances, I ended up transitioning into full-time activism because that was where my time and dedication was most needed. Right. So, I mean, it really has been a very productive, I would say that was the best decision, one of my best life decisions, and it was definitely the best decision I made last year. Because to have the ability to transition into doing this work and to continue to grow something that I was responsible for starting on a full-time basis really has been, it really has had a lot of good meaning for me, not just me, but also others in the movement. So in addition to my responsibilities as the founder and president of Black Nonbelievers, I also currently serve on the boards for American Atheists and the American Humanist Association, which are two of our larger and more well-known atheist, humanist, secular organizations. So if you aren't already familiar with them, a Google search would very much come in handy. And I've previously served on the boards for Foundation Beyond Belief and the Secular Coalition for America. Before I became a board member for the American Humanist Association, I served on their board chair nominating committee. And so there are a number of things that I have done within the secular movement. Black Nonbelievers has had a presence at DragonCon since 2014. And we've only skipped 2017, much to, Derek was not happy about that. And I really wish I could have been here until I could clone myself. But it's been a pleasure and an honor to be presenting here, especially since it's in my backyard. And it's just such an amazing event. But again, getting into how the fundraising for our organizations and our events and whatever we do, initiatives, is important. It is an important part of this work, money. So if you're non-religious anymore, or you don't go to church, but you may still be involved in other activities, an important part of any of the work is money. And I like to read this quote from Zig Ziglar, not someone who I follow regularly, but money isn't the most important thing in life, but it's reasonably close to oxygen on the gotta have it scale. As much as we will love, and I've heard this feedback from folks who come to DragonCon, that it's less commercial, it isn't all about the buck, which is great. That is an amazing aspect, but still, in order to put something on this great, it takes money. And for most of anything that we do, it takes money. Now, many of you and many of us may have been employed in fields where you don't have to ask for money, or you don't have to engage people on a regular basis. I come from a customer service, people engagement background, so that kind of helps. But for those of us who may be in a more academic field, or you don't have to work with the general public as much as others, then that just might be a bit more difficult. So we're going to get into why is it so tough to do the ask, especially if you are not a person who has a background in financing or even development, because many organizations have what's called development directors. There are people who are hired specifically to come up with fundraising ideas and also fundraising initiatives. They're the ones who try to bring the money in. But if you're in a smaller organization, you don't have development. So as the founder and president of a volunteer organization, I am pretty much the development director. And and then many people may find that when they're starting out or when you're in a small organization, you may have to do what is called the ask for your organization or for your initiative. Now, why can that be so tough? Because it can be a very hard thing. How many of you have a hard time asking for anything? Yes. And how many of you have a hard time asking for money? Yes. So there may be a number of reasons for that, and I'm going to go into that. So one may be limited experience. Again, you may not have necessarily any background or experience or education in development or what it takes to do that ask. And also fear of rejection. How many of us love to hear the word no? I don't think anyone does, right? Yeah. So there's a fear of rejection that when you do the ask, there may be people who will say, I'm not interested, or I can't do it, or whether I'll do it another time. So no is a tough thing to hear. If you're doing the ask for money or support for your organization. This next one is kind of near and dear to the secular community, is that we don't want to appear greedy or opportunistic. And I personally have an issue when I encounter people and the only thing they do is ask for money or support for their organization or initiative. That can be very, very draining. So many of us want to avoid that. You want to appear like that sharky salesman, because that, we kind of don't like that. And it also appears to be inauthentic as well. So we definitely want to be mindful of that. Also, the number of asks that can come in return. Now, I would say for the number of asks that I do, I tend to get about double in return. Or that there are a number of people who may ask me for things that I tend to not say no to, but I need to adjust here. Okay. Is that better? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So hopefully that's better. So the number of asks that can come in return can be very overwhelming and daunting. And that is something that if you don't have a strong team in place, that can be very tough to deal with. And if you're doing a lot by yourself, you kind of have to have a thick skin for it. And so learning how to balance that is extremely important. But as tough as the ask can be, and you have folks who want to know where your money's going, what the organization is about, what you're doing with it. Now, depending on the size of your organization, that can be an easy thing to explain for some people. In other instances, it may be a bit more difficult. But why do organizations need money? For a number of reasons. Need them for advertising, marketing, promotion, especially if you're having a large event or if you're putting together a very important initiative, or whether it's just a part of your regular routine as an organization. We need to advertise, market, and promote, because that's how we get people interested and getting them involved. We also need money for operations, salary and volunteer. Just because an organization is volunteer, it doesn't mean that there isn't an operating budget or funds that need to be allocated for operations. Like Derek said, there is a number of funds, there might be a certain amount of funds allocated, but they, for the volunteers, even if they're not getting paid, they still need funds to get the things they need. And also supplies. Again, that's not just the, even your paper clips, office products, brochures, anything in addition to, and that goes back to advertising and marketing. So even something as simple as food and water to have for your volunteers, those are considered supplies. And ongoing programs, whether they are event-based, whether they are charitable-based, or whether they are other types of programs designated for your organizations, they need funds for that as well. Also, charitable giving efforts. Many of our nonprofits look to serve communities or aspects of communities, and so therefore there may be a certain number of there's a certain amount of money that needs to be designated for those efforts, especially for nonprofits where when the revenue goes in, the money must be going out. Also, again, special events, conferences, conventions, etc. Many of your organizations do put on various events, and there's money needed for that. And guess what comes along with having special events, conferences, conventions, etc.? Speakers. So if you like to attend events where there are speakers, guess what? Even if they are not being paid per se, it takes money to get them there. And it takes money to make sure that they are at least taken care of, which is only fair if you're asking someone to present and speak for your event, whether it is larger or smaller. Also, training. Now, there are a lot more free training avenues out there for nonprofits. There are a number of webinars that other organizations like Network for Good, they may offer free webinars on how to do fundraising and such, and also training. However, there may be better forms that you may have to pay for at times, especially if you have organizers that have limited experience or even inexperience in certain areas and they're wanting to learn more, then there's a training process that they need to go through, at least on a basic level. And so this incorporates why organizations need money, and it's important for us to let people know why we need this, because again, we're not living in a magic wand society. For those of us who are more non-religious, we realize that it takes work to do so. And so with that, we'll talk about the elevator pitch, which is how you explain the core of your organization and why others should help in the amount of time, in the normal amount of times that it takes to ride an elevator with someone. Like, what would you say to someone about your organization or about the initiative that would make them interested in supporting? And here are some brief tips for them. Should be brief and concise, i.e. short and sweet. Should be very brief and to the point. It can also be no more than about 30 to 60 seconds. Should be conversational instead of strictly promotional. So meaning that you can start off, especially with the greeting. Hi, how are you? I'm such and such. You have to put your best foot forward as far as your people, your people engagement and your customer service. And if it's something that you utilize on a regular basis, it's good to also know how to talk to people. And also provide materials in addition to the words. So when someone can see and have something in their hand, or nowadays they may take pictures because we're going more digital. So if there is a resource that they might be able to hold in their hand, or something that's tangible that they can look up later, in addition to the pitch, then that always helps. So it's not that you're just telling them what you're about, you're also showing them. And in a way that, again, is very brief and concise, short but sweet, so that you're not overdoing it. So this was crafted as a group discussion, but what are some ways we can ask for money for our organizations? So one is direct ask through your website, through email. If you have an organization that has an email distribution, you can certainly create either a newsletter or an email blast as often as you think it's needed. I recommend no more than about once or twice a month if you're a smaller organization, because how many times do we ignore either weekly or daily emails that ask for money? We tend to ignore those because they get, they're overwhelming and they do clog up your inbox. So, and also through social media, because now that we have more opportunities to fundraise online, there are great ways to explain what your organization is about. And if you're on Twitter or on Instagram or even Facebook, you can kind of do a shorter elevator pitch that's written. So we can definitely do the ask, and through mailing as well. There are some larger organizations that will mail you information. You see a lot of them that goes to the next tab, which is tabling. This has been a great way for Black Nonbelievers, for example, to get some exposure. And we have a sign-up sheet on our list. If you go to other conventions and conferences and exhibitions, you have many organizations that have a sign-up list, so that if you're interested in more information, you can be added to their distributions or their mailing list, and they may send you materials periodically in order to give you updates on their activities and their work, and to encourage you to donate more. And so, again, that always depends on the amount of resources that you may have. If they are limited, then the online less cost effective or more cost effective ways can be helpful. Now, a good thing about social media as well is like avenues through Facebook. If you have a Facebook page, you can pay a small amount to boost for an ad to boost it. And so that way it goes to a certain audience, and if they're interested in either your product or your organization, then they may be more inclined to support. Also, wearing organizations merchandise. Ta-da! Here we go. So if your organization has t-shirts, if there's other items like coffee mugs, if there's buttons, if there's lanyards, if there's any smaller items that you can do to advertise your organization or your company, something that you can leave with folks that even if they don't look at it now, they may look at it later, or they may just have it. So something that, and if you're walking by, somebody may ask you, well, where did you get that? Or what does this mean? And then that's a good conversation starter as well. So you may not necessarily, and also can help cut down on your initial engagement. So if someone is asking you about what you're either wearing or what you have, then that would be a good way to kind of draw them into you instead of you always having to go out to them. So it's sometimes that nonverbal communication does help when you're wearing, your company or you're wearing your organization. Also displaying organization's materials, depending on where you are. If there is the opportunity to put maybe some flyers down, or put down some of your other organizations, either giveaways. And this is something that's important to note, is that sometimes you have to spend that money to make that money. And there may be some things that you will have to invest in. You'll have to invest in giving, some smaller items that you can give away in order for some people, in order for folks to consider supporting later. Now, of course, for nonprofit organizations, especially if you're a 501c3, donations should be, they're often tax deductible to the fullest extent of the law. And if a donor gives you a gift, there is no expectation of getting any money back, because they're giving it for a worthy cause. So getting into that, in order to be able to do those things, of course, we need financial support. So here are options for financial support. If your organization isn't already a nonprofit registered or 501c3, it is good to go to the IRS's website to do research on how to do that. If you are fortunate enough to have either an accountant or development person or an attorney or someone who can work on that for you, that's great. But again, if you're a smaller organization, more than likely you have to do it yourself. And guess what? You can do it yourself. There is no obligation if you're a smaller organization to hire someone, because you want to be careful. You want to avoid putting yourself or the organization in debt, because that could possibly happen. Or if you have folks who are skilled and are willing to volunteer their resources, then that's also great. But incorporating an organization or a nonprofit only takes no more than about $100, and you can do that through your state. And to file for, I know some of the rules have changed with the IRS, but they've made it easier for smaller organizations to become a nonprofit tax-exempt organization. So it is something that you can do, and they give you instructions on it. But of course, it is always good to have someone who is skilled in that field to at least assist you, because the more mistakes you make, the longer it takes. So definitely look into that. And what the tax exempt status does, it does allow you to accept, again, donations. It allows you to apply for grants. And it also qualifies you for other tax exemption benefits, especially if you have to order supplies through other companies. So there are a lot of benefits to becoming a nonprofit 501c3. Also, merchandise purchases directly on websites. If your organization has a store, if there's merchandise that you sell, it would be good to invest in an online engine. Now, some of them may have a monthly cost, and some of them may be a bit more, they might be a bit cheaper, but it's up to, again, what the organization may have. But also, too, now nonprofit 501c3 organizations can sign up for Amazon Smile. So if you shop on Amazon a lot, and there's an organization that you like to support, all you need is their tax ID number, their federal tax ID number, and a portion of your purchases goes towards supporting the organization. Also, there's workplace giving. If your job offers the opportunity to do a matching donation to an organization, or they can deduct a certain amount of your check, which goes towards supporting the organization as well. So the most popular one, or the most recognized one, is the Combined Federal Campaign, which is through the federal government. So there's a list of organizations that they partner with, or that they showcase that federal employees can designate a certain amount of their check to. There's a lot of religious organizations on there, but there's also, again, there's other nonprofits as well. Now, there is a fee for that. So if your organization can afford it, go for it. If not, you may want to skip that. But there are some other organizations or some other companies where you don't necessarily need to go through that process. They can go straight through, they can verify your organization's nonprofit status, and your members who have jobs that allow for this can support the organization that way. Also, attending and or sponsoring events and programs. Going back to what I said about spending money in order to make money, if your organization can support sponsoring other initiatives, then that is a good way to get for exposure for you, and to hopefully get some crossover into people who may want to support or participate with your organization. So that's always a good thing to consider. Hopefully, again, the most cost-effective ways always work a lot better. But if it takes a bit to kind of, if you know you're an organization that is looking to, of course, if you're looking to build your audience and build your membership, then you may just have to put a little bit more out there. And also, it's okay to look to table or be seen at events that you may not necessarily, engage in regularly. Now, for us, this is kind of up our alley because many of our members are, again, they're comic, TV show enthusiasts. There's a lot of other fandom things. So, we tend to capture a lot of folks who will say, wow, okay, this is good, right on. So it's an investment for us, which is great. And we had to step out of a comfort zone in order to do it. So, but also, again, speaking of merchandise, and I spoke about this yesterday, if you thought you had to be Black to support Black nonbelievers, then you would be sorely mistaken. Or if you thought that you had to be within a certain group to support their efforts, you don't. We talked about being a good ally yesterday, and I think that's still important to reiterate that even if there is an initiative or something that may not pertain to you directly, you may know someone who might be affected by it, either now or perhaps in the future. So it's good to at least take a look at what the organization is about, and if you feel it is worthy to support, then please do so. But improving our techniques to doing the ask, to encouraging people to support your organization. These are some things that are very important to keep in mind, which is body language is important. Make sure you are smiling, you're making eye contact, and that you are being friendly. Friendly is very, very good. Not overly friendly to where it seems like it's fake, again, but just your basic eye contact and a smile that costs you nothing but maybe a bit of discomfort if you're not used to doing it. However, if you are trying to fundraise either for an organization or for your organization, that is absolutely going to be important. Also, being consistent and reciprocal. Consistent with not just your asks, but also how you engage people, and also not just because you're looking for support from them. And also, if there is an opportunity to reciprocate that support, you make sure you're doing it. Make sure you're not just asking people to support you, but you're not supporting them. Also, teamwork is important as well. Finding the best person for the job and helping each other. Now, in an ideal world, we'd be able to afford folks that we could hire for this stuff. And even then, it takes teamwork. They need to know the persons who may be the development persons who are raising the money may not necessarily be the most creative in other ways. So therefore, it's about working together to come up with some good ideas and, and implementing them in order for them to work. And if it's, of course, if it's a volunteer efforts, then you might have to work a little harder. Not even might, you do have to work a little bit harder. So just keeping in mind that as much as, it's sometimes we may be feeling like we're the only ones doing the work. I know there are certain times where I know that is the case, where you feel like you're the only one who is doing everything, but it takes a team. Derek can't be in the back and in front at the same time. So it does take collective, takes a good team and partnership with folks in order to be able to pull this stuff off. Also, remembering that the work won't do itself, though we wish it could. Yes, well, yes, all of that. Now, as much as technology is at our disposal, which is amazing, it does make a part of this work a lot easier. It still takes these human hands to make sure that they're working effectively for us. We can't put something out one time and expect everything to just be taken care of. That's not how this works. Practice does make perfect here. And that if it's something that you're very passionate about, but you think you have the limited skills to do it, it's good to utilize those educational efforts. And also, if there's someone, if it may be good to watch some of the financial programming that you may see on certain news networks, on a lot of how-tos, so that you're not just waiting for the other person to do it or another entity to do it. It's good to have some hands-on knowledge and hands-on experience, again, especially if we're dealing with smaller organizations and startup initiatives that are more on the grassroots level. So again, the work will not do itself, but it eventually does pay off. And again, being consistent with it, especially if it's something that is important to you and you know it's helping others, it definitely will pay off in the long run. So in conclusion, which is our ask for Black Nonbelievers. Like I said, we are a 501c3 organization and headquartered in the Atlanta area. We are dedicated to providing a caring, friendly, and informative environment. We connect with other Blacks and allies who are living free of religion and might otherwise be shunned by family members and friends. Instead of accepting dogma, we determine truth and morality through reason and evidence. And you can find this information on our website. However, it is important, I found that it's always important to be able to explain this to folks, because we have had people come up to our tables even this weekend who said they are struggling with, they know that there is something that they don't believe anymore, but it is difficult for folks to actually verbalize and express, especially saying the word atheist. Especially saying they're atheists, particularly from the Black community. So it's always important, and our organization is definitely people-oriented and engaging folks offline through a number of means. And one of the ways that we're doing that is through our Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference, which is taking place in Chicago next month from the 4th through the 6th. All of the presenters and all of the organizers are women of color that are in the secular movement, that are doing various work in the social justice areas of church and state separation, reproductive rights, criminal justice reform. And so, and this is the first of its kind where you are hearing from women of color who are no longer believers, which is still an underserved demographic and still widely unrecognized demographic. So as an organization, this is what we're co-hosting this as this year, and we hope that you'll be able to attend as well as support it, because our voices are important. So with your organizations and with whatever initiatives that you are a part of or that you support, do know that it is needed for whatever it is that you're doing. And no matter how tough it can be, because it can be tough. But again, being consistent, remaining courageous, because it takes courage to do this, especially again, if it's something that is important to you. It does take, it can be scary. It can be very, very scary, but with the right amount of support and the right amount of encouragement, and again, practicing and making sure that, and reading people, making sure that that you continue to evaluate how you're coming across and how you may be received by others. And just, there's going to be a lot of mistakes you make along the way, and try not to beat yourself up. Try not to beat yourself up. If something doesn't work the first time, you can always try it again. And if you find that it isn't working consistently, then it's good to go back to the drawing board and find out what you can do better. And again, when it comes to people, because people are people, you just got to make sure that patience is a good thing too, because many of these companies did not grow overnight. And it takes time to build. So building that solid foundation is always going to be important. And that means doing the grunt work, doing the work that you didn't think you would ever have to do before, but becoming good at it And once you do that and you're able to, whether you're still going to school to be educated on it, or whether you go back, or whether you just do it practically, because there is a lot of good education in hands-on experience and hands-on and doing things hands-on. So remembering that there are a number of ways to do it. You can exercise your creativity in doing your ask and raising funds. If you're able to create visuals, if you're able to do videos, then it's good to be able to do that too. So just recognizing that, again, there's no one right way to do it, and that everyone who works in this does deserve to be paid for what they do. I do think that in order for that, it's, people deserve to, if not to be paid, but to be compensated. And that's something that we should be taking into consideration when we're doing our ask. So we're not just, and then again, that we are serving other people as well. So keeping all of that in mind should make your asks that much easier and much more palatable to others who may be interested in supporting, and you never know what type of reception you may get. So again, we don't, like I said, our organization, we walk by sight, not by faith. Now that doesn't mean we know everything, but it means not, overcoming those fears and doing the things that's necessary in order for us to get where we need to go. And that is one of the most important parts of doing the ask for the things, money in particular, that we do need. So thank you very much. I hope that was very helpful. And now we have time for questions. Thank you. Yeah, if we can go, there's a microphone back there.
Hey Mandisa, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
I found your information very helpful.
Thank you.
I have a question. I'm a board member for the Taiwanese Association of America, the North Carolina chapter.
Yes.
And I know we need to apply for grants. I don't have any experience writing grants, but the town of Cary, which is where the nonprofit is based,
yes,
we need to apply for grants because we need money.
Right, right.
We're a very small nonprofit with not a lot of money. So what would you suggest for grant writing if I don't have any experience writing grants? Okay,
so I'll tell you that I wrote my first grant proposal this year. And luckily, I had a couple of our members who were able to give some. There are a lot of templates. If you type in grant writing templates, or there's a lot of free advice on how to write grants. And of course, it always depends on the amount of the grant as well as the information you need to provide. So some may need a summary, a description of what you're asking for. They may have an application process. So you'll want to, some may need like a timetable or like a budget, and some of them may need even your smaller grants. It's good to know how to incorporate a description of your organization, a description of what you need, the timeline for which you can produce and complete it, and the budget. And so sometimes you may need to break it down into what you would need for advertising, marketing, employment, or graphic design and such. So depending on what the grant requires, it's good to have that information. And if you're somewhat proficient in your Microsoft Office or your Google Sheets and Drives and your and the other one that does presentations. So it's good to practice on those as well. And the good thing about those is that if you mess something up, you can always fix it. So it's good to work on programs where you can either just save it, you can create it if you think that there's something that, it's kind of playing with it does help. And it can be tedious and time consuming, but if you don't have the resources, there's a lot of good free grant writing templates and grant writing advice on what you need. So definitely you'll want to start there.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, Mandisa.
Hello, Kathy.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do you receive designations through a United Way?
I do.
Yay!
Yes,
Yay. I work
do, we
for
do.
a local United Way. So I wanted to make sure the local groups know that. Now, many of us, especially in the South, I think, work with a United Way that has some religious partner agencies.
Yes.
But know that you can give if you see good in their work and you just want to help everybody that United Way is helping, you can do that. I happen to know
yes.
that because I work for a local United Way.
Yes.
But also, you can, if you've got a corporation that does matching funds or that you know many of your members in your local group are working for,
Yep.
and you are a legitimate 501c3,
Yes.
you can designate on that United Way giving form, and all the United Ways that I know, if it's a legitimate 501c3, even if maybe leadership doesn't have the same mindset as that donor does, they will honor that.
Oh, perfect.
And so I want folks to know that, but they have to designate to, in our case, North Alabama Free Thought Association.
Right.
And so I just want folks to know that is, because there's about 1,200 United Ways across the country. So often there is a United Way in your community. And then again, I think, because call them out, their name is United Way. That means they should be for the whole community.
Right, exactly.
And so
right.
if you have an opportunity to find some common ground on women's reproductive rights or on poverty or on homelessness or whatever, maybe that's another connection you can make in your local community. So I would just encourage folks to do that. And often your United Way is a good source on how to write grants.
Yes.
They can give you some ideas and information and resources. The one thing I would say about grants is that always do your research first, because if you're applying and it doesn't match what that grantor's focus area
will be
is or
rejected.
interest, it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people do that, put a lot of effort into it, and then don't, get that.
Right.
So your local libraries can help you. Some of them have a database of grant opportunities. So there are lots of resources, local and communities, I think, that can help.
Yes, thank you for that, Kathy.
You're
And
welcome.
it does take doing some research, and it can be very daunting. It can be very time consuming, especially if you're doing it on your own, but it's worth looking for. And there's nothing wrong with even approaching these organizations and sort of in putting yourself out there. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Bill Creasy. I'm with the Washington Area Secular Humanists.
Hello, I know your
yeah.
group.
Okay, nice to meet you. Yeah, you probably met Samantha McGuire, her
Yes.
former executive. She just got a better promotion. So, but we've been around for about 30 years, and a lot of that time we've been kind of subscription model based. So. And I think we're finding out the last couple of years or so that works better on the older demographic. I was just thinking whether they are willing to pay for the honor of calling themselves a secular humanist, or we did do a paper newsletter for a while. Now we've got a bigger role of members on Meetup, but they're a lot less active. So I was just wondering what your demographic looks like, whether you've got kind of old people or whether you're mostly on the young side.
Actually, we have a mix at Black Nonbelievers, and I think this is because we use different avenues. So we're on Meetup. We also have our subscription on our website. We do an email blast. We're also on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. So we do utilize a lot of social media. So many of our members are in between their 30s to 50s. Now, we do have some younger folks, which we still do if they're still in high school or college. Then we do partner. We work with the Secular Student Alliance, for example. And many of our organizations cross over. So we collaborate and work with others. But we tend to get a good mix of Gen Xers through millennials.
Okay.
Because we do utilize a lot of social media. Now we do tend to, the mature demographic. I don't like to say old. I say our mature members. Now, many of them may benefit more from something, that's printed and sent to them, but that can be costly. So, and then when we're talking about the digital age, you know, not to say that, well, they should just get with the times, but it's a good thing to kind of utilize a few avenues. But yes, we do tend to get more of, like I said, between our 30s and 50s, our members, because they're still tuned in with social media enough to be able to receive correspondence from us regularly. And so that has helped us a lot. Yes.
Hi, yes, my name is Daniel Gerber. I used to work for the Carstairs Plan Giving Office development team. And my question for you is what programs or what software do you use to track your donors for your organization? How have you structured for you, and how would you recommend people structure their donor engagement strategies for, you know, if you're membership based, you might want to use a different program, or if you know you're looking at individual giving, you might want to use a different CRM. And I was just wondering what you use for your organization.
Well, right now I know there are some other, software. I know American Atheist uses Blackbaud, but for us, because Black Nonbelievers is still very small, I keep an Excel spreadsheet of our donors. And for people who have mailed us checks, we do tend to keep their address on file, not to flood them with a lot of mail, but to send a thank you, and then maybe to send an update like earlier in the year. So maybe about once or twice a year, we may do a mailing. And also we keep track of our donors through PayPal. PayPal saves everything. So we're integrated with PayPal. And we do have a list of people who have donated to us previously. And so we also incorporate MailChimp. We have MailChimp for the website, and that's who our email distribution list goes through. So it's a number of things that we do utilize, especially as a smaller organization, that are a bit more cost effective. And also because we take debit and credit cards through Square, that may keep a record through Square as well, even though it doesn't save any credit card information, and neither does PayPal. What it does is it saves the email information, which is the most important. So they tend to be pretty, they tend to be pretty reliable. But for a larger organization, it may use something like Blackbaud. I think there was like LexisNexis that people may have been using for membership.
Yeah, Razor's Edge is, I think, the Blackbaud product.
Yes, yeah. So and now we've done a loosely based membership because and it's probably something that we have been brainstorming that in the future about how to do memberships, especially if they're tiered. We encourage people to do monthly giving because there is that option on PayPal. You can make it a monthly gift. And I mean, you can cancel it when you want. So again, it really is good for at least saving the information that you need from donors. And again, if you still receive paper checks, because sometimes we do get checks mailed to us, I immediately record them on our spreadsheet, and then I make sure that I type form letters sometimes, and then I send them out when necessary. So ours is still more of a loosely based system, but for your larger organizations that may be pulling in six figures, which again, we're working to get to that point. But yes, those other engines may be more effective. And also Network for Good does offer an integrated system. I've talked with them about doing that, but I'm like, well, it doesn't make any sense to pay anything extra for the stuff I already have, because they don't work with PayPal and such. So it depends on your ability to switch over to those features as well. And I know there are some banks too that offer like processing at least for payment. But if it's a membership, then those might be some other avenues. Yes.
Hi, my name is Nan. I volunteer for a nonprofit that runs a Harry Potter summer camp.
Okay. Oh,
and
cool.
Here in the Deep South, it can be really tricky to ask for donations for something when it's just a Harry Potter summer camp, but so many people think it's like religious based, and it's not. A lot of our kids that come are Christian, but a lot of them are also not Christian. Do you have any advice for asking for donations for something that is specifically non-religious.
That's often our trick
without,
because
like, putting people off.
right. So that's often where we come into our challenges, because sometimes it is hard to ask for donations for an organization that provides community support for Blacks who are atheists. Because, and then too, it's like, well, we are providing and offering a service, and we do a lot of good things, but sometimes it's hard to put into words like exactly what that is. Now, I would say for something like Harry Potter, which is not just entertainment, but it is also informative and educational, and the kids have a good time. So I try to be, I would say be very careful about, just saying, well, it's for the kids, because that tends to be a turnoff in some areas. But if it is, if it is something that is, educational for them, and just make it about Harry Potter, make it about the subject matter and the different activities that they could be doing with it, and of course, I know, and isn't Harry Potter banned in some countries because it's labeled witchcraft? Yeah, in some, yeah. So it's unfortunately may be seen as witchcraft to some. So it may be very difficult to market that to a religious organization. And the one advantage that I would say that those organizations or those institutions have had was the fact that the guilt factor. You've been donating to your religious organization for years because it's been told, it's been implied that that's what God wants you to do. But it's a bit trickier for other nonprofit organizations, especially if you aren't providing because most of us are providing a specific service, and it is a service. So I think having maybe themed-based events might be helpful, and also, of course, doing ticketed and registered events. That sounds like that's something that, because it's a camp, that's something that people would have to pay for. And it's good to have themes surrounding in that event as well that could make it more, exciting, and it doesn't have to be specific language. It can just be general, and especially if you're appealing towards kids, it can be fun, informative, taking out, if there are some, I don't imagine Harry Potter to be something that's extremely violent or graphic. I don't think it is, but if it appeals to the more fun side, especially if there are different age demographics, there may be some material that might be more palatable for the smaller kids, but just being creative in the activities that you're providing, that it will appeal to the parents to send their kids would be very helpful. Were there any more questions? All right, if that is it, thank you all very much for attending. I hope you enjoyed the last day of the con, and please feel free to, what are you saying, Derek? Oh, yes, perfect. I will be sitting at the table in just a few moments if you have more questions. So again, thank you once again for attending. I hope it was very, very helpful. Thank you.